City Center Radio. It is episode 262, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, June 10th, 2024. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. So happy to have you with me here today. It is Monday. Going to get you caught up on a few stories and then send you out into the week. I hope it's a good one for you. Very quiet weekend for me. No fun shows or crazy events to attend like last week, where I had a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Had something to do every night during that weekend. I had no plans this time around, so nothing to share in terms of that. But I am excited to make one announcement. As some of you know, if you've been listening to this podcast or maybe know me personally or what have you, I used to have a full-time job outside of Holy City Center. I left that job late last year to pursue Holy City Center full-time. But it wasn't just this website. I was brought, myself and the site were basically brought under this new startup company. So the company's name is Milo News. Milo stands for My Local, so MYLO. And, we're still working out some of the details of what exactly the future of the whole company would be. But for now, there's a few brands that are underneath that umbrella, so I'll call them like my sibling publications or sibling websites or whatever it may be. And I've been helping with online content for some of those and trying to help grow this company and bring other people on to basically just have a portfolio of different, media entities. From social media to blogs like mine. There's community newspapers that are underneath this umbrella as well. We also have marketing opportunities for any businesses that need help with marketing or building a website or creating a logo and things like that. So we kind of have a whole lot of different stuff in like the media and communications realm. And it's hasn't quite been a year yet. September will be a year since I've been with them. And the company that's basically when it started as well. Although the entities underneath it, like my Holy City Center has been around for, it'll be 13 years here in a couple months. But we're all together as a team, since September. And it's been an amazing experience. I'm really enjoying everything that goes along with it. And also the coworkers I have, they're all really cool and creative. And it's a lot of fun to brainstorm and work on projects with them. So, as I mentioned, underneath that umbrella are two community newspapers. You may be familiar with them. One is called the Island Eye News. That services like Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, I think like Goat Island and Dewee's Island, but mainly IOP and Sullivan's. And then the other paper is the Island Connection, which is more of like Kiowa and Seabrook area. And so they've been in the community for, 20 years, I think, 20 plus years. And they've been run by a few people. And the Island Eye News, so that's the Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island side of things. The two gentlemen that have been doing a lot of the content work, editing, and putting the paper together are semi-retiring. They're still going to be around to help out with the paper. They're just taking major step backs as far as the day-to-day. So those papers come out, both of them, not just Island Eye News, the Island Connection as well. They come out twice a month, and they're free papers that are delivered to every single house on those islands. And then there's places around the community where you can pick them up for free. And so with them leaving, I was asked and accepted to take on a role, technically with both papers, but really more so with Island Eye News, as sort of like an assistant publisher, editor-in-chief type role with obviously help from the guys who have been there. But, eventually, and I mean, really right away, I'm getting lots of help from them right now, but essentially I'm in that role is full time. So this week here that we're in, this Friday, the first issue of the paper of Island Eye News that I'm sort of, the editor in chief. Again, I'm using that pretty loosely because I had plenty of help. But it's the first one that I had a major hand in planning and getting out there. And I hope the community enjoys it. I hope it comes out well. didn't want to make any major changes. That audience is very different than Holy City Center's audience. So I wasn't about to come in there and kind of do some of the same things I do at Holy City Center. We very much want to still keep it very focused on those islands specifically and the type of news that they're used to getting, whether it's town council meeting updates and events specific to the island. But we'll sprinkle in some new things here and there, maybe some different angles to stories that they're not used to, and we're bringing on some new writers and things, and we're really excited because it's not just me. My teammates are helping out with this project as well, and it's been really fun and nerve wracking and stressful leading up to this issue. But I'm very much looking forward to this opportunity, and so just a really cool experience. However long this goes. Would hope it's long term and I enjoy it. So we'll see. But so far, so good. And again, I just, the real test is when the paper comes out and what the people in the community think. But I believe they won't even really notice a big change, at least not at first. Like I said, I really didn't want to stray far from what they've been doing for the last 20 years. It'd be a mistake to come in and make these major changes, especially to a publication that's free, because people will just stop paying attention to it. Yeah, it'll still get delivered to them, but if they're not enjoying it, they're not going to pay it any mind. And what's the point, So looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll get some good feedback. But I wanted to share that as it is an update in my world and why over the last month or so, sometimes the podcast has to take a back seat. And some episodes were missed, so that was when you've heard me come on like, hey, sorry we didn't record, things have been busy. It's not just Holy City Center stuff, it's also been working on that, as well as other ideas that we're working on in the company that I can't necessarily talk about at this time. But so just wanted to give you a heads up, a little personal update, and appreciate you all being patient when episodes were missed, and in your understanding. But that's the latest update from my world. Some exciting stuff. But now let's get into the news. In an effort to protect historic districts from all sorts of different types of development, the Charleston County Council recently passed the first reading of a temporary moratorium. So this ordinance is aiming to protect historic subdivisions by halting development for 2 years. Specifically, the council approved the first reading with a vote of 5-3. So not a done deal yet, but they are working towards preventing development in certain historic subdivisions. The reason for this, should make sense. They're trying to protect areas of the city from a couple things. Number one, keeping things that are historic and haven't seen much change or development. They want to keep it that way. They don't want to ruin the charm of these specific subdivisions. But also, as is the case in many cities, some of these historic subdivisions are, home to marginalized communities, minority communities, and they want to prevent, forcing people out, if, basically preventing any kind of gentrification of that area, or any buildings that might come in there and price people out. So it makes sense. Glad the city's doing it. Sometimes I wonder if the city's a little too deferential to certain aspects of the history, but this is one that makes sense. So it's not done yet. There's still some time to go. And like I said, they just want to stop development unless it's consistent with the character of those historic districts and meets the needs of the county. So you're making sure that it's also beneficial to everyone involved if there is going to be some development. So as they get up to, as they keep working on this and lead up to the next votes, county officials said they plan to reach out to each of these communities to ask for residents' input. The council does have the right to amend the ordinance up until the third reading. Once it hits the third reading and it gets voted on, that's it. So still some time to go, but that is where that current ordinance sits and could be on the way. Some awesome news. I'm so excited and happy for this gentleman, North Charleston native KJ Kearney. I'm sure I've mentioned him on this podcast before. He's done so much within the community over the years, but one of the things he's best known for is creating the TikTok and Instagram account, and eventually website and other channels as well, called Black Food Fridays. He developed that during the pandemic. We all know what happened then, and as a lot of businesses, specifically food and bev, were struggling, but a lot of black-owned restaurants were particularly having a hard time, and he just wanted to shine a spotlight on that community, and make sure that people weren't forgetting about these restaurants, was broadcasting ways to help them out. They all weren't on, say, Uber Eats or any of those platforms. Not all restaurants, especially mom and pop restaurants, were able to do that because the fees would just eat too much. And you all are probably well aware of this. uh, it's not very profitable for a lot of businesses to be on those apps because they take so much of a percentage of the total cost, which led, of course, to some restaurants raising prices, but others just couldn't even afford to get on there or do that because they probably wouldn't have got many sales. They still wouldn't have been making as much money, and so on and so forth. There's so many challenges that a lot of restaurants had, and KJ took it upon himself to create this account to try to alleviate some of those challenges for Black-owned restaurants. And it got a lot of attention. It's led to opportunities for him, including hosting of a PBS series about food and how it intersects with politics. But he finally got the biggest recognition there is in the food and beverage world. He was nominated for a James Beard Foundation Media Award previously, but he was nominated again this year, and this time he won. That happened on Saturday night. I'm so happy for him because he's a really good guy. I haven't had him on this podcast, but I've talked to him at events. He's always been super kind and willing to share news with me and talk with me. And on a podcast I was on before this, I think we did it in like 2021. There was this podcast I was on with a couple other folks where we interviewed a few people in the community. We're just trying to do something during the pandemic, and he was willing to come on, and he was great as always. He's just a really good guy, and I'm so happy for him. But yes, KJ Kearney of Black Food Fridays received the award for the James Beard Media Award for social media account. So congrats to him. If you haven't already, check out Black Food Fridays on, like I said, TikTok's the main thing, but he's also on Instagram. There's a website. Yes, take a look at the work he's been doing because it's expanded greatly since the pandemic. It's no longer just, hey, here's a spotlight on these Charleston Black-owned restaurants. It then grew to other states, and now it's led to other stories and other coverages that he's been able to do, all still related around Black-owned restaurants or foods that are associated culturally with the Black community or whatever else it may be. He just does an amazing job of tying in history with current day, and again, just so excited for him. So congrats to KJ. People in politics or who follow politics, they sometimes hear this term, the November surprise or October surprise, where I forget where it originated. I feel like it was like the 60s or 70s, where some big story, some bombshell dropped just before an election, presidential election, that likely swung or at least made it the election not close. If it didn't completely swing from one person to the other, it made it a bigger victory for the person who did not have the scandal. And sometimes these things drop before elections, and it's politically motivated. Obviously, people will sit on things. I'll get emails or tips from campaigns sometimes about, oh, have you seen this thing that people are talking about? Or did you hear that this politician was arrested in such and such year? And it's always around the time where the election's about to happen. Well, you may know that, yes, we're in June, but the primary for each party, primary voting here in South Carolina is on Tuesday. Now, there was an early voting period, so some of you may have already voted, but the official election day is this Tuesday, June 11th. Don't forget to vote if you haven't. South Carolina allows you to vote on either primary, so feel free to vote in whichever one you see fit. But that aside, a pretty big story dropped. And of course, as these things go, the candidate involved has denied it. And I'll get to the specifics here in a moment. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And, but nonetheless, a pretty big story to drop just a handful of days before the primary election. So the Attorney General's office in South Carolina recently lifted a key redaction in an incident report. Now, they had this report that they've been sitting on for a couple years, and it was heavily redacted, including the suspect's name. There was tips that it was a politician, perhaps. And for a long time, some local media entities have been trying to get these redactions lifted, at least the suspect's name. But it was refused for a long time. But on Friday, they finally uh, took out that redaction. And we found out that sitting Senator Dion Tedder, a Democrat from Charleston, is the suspect in this report. So, as I said, this incident is 2 years old, and the incident reports lists him as a suspect in a rape. So obviously, very serious allegations here. The heavily redacted incident report was received by WISTV back in November, and as I've mentioned, it provided very limited details on an alleged sex crime that happened in Columbia back in April of 2022. Tedder's name was revealed as the suspect on the report only after Gray Television's attorneys, and Gray Television is a company that owns multiple local TV stations around the country. So the parent company, their attorneys put pressure on the office for months and months to finally have this information come out. So Tedder, he's a freshman senator. He has filed for re-election. He did so back in March, and he has denied the allegations in the incident report. So obviously keep that in mind. Very serious allegations. He's denying it, and that's where it stands right now. There has been no arrest, innocent until proven guilty, all the things that happen when these sort of things come out. Which is not to say that I don't believe the report is true or anything like that. Just, that's how the criminal justice system works here. That's all I'm saying. So the incident report states that the woman said the rape happened in April of 2022 at 1105 Shop Road in Columbia, which, according to local media reports, is a Richland County property that's called the Row at Stadium. It's an off-campus townhome, so where, students could live, perhaps. But although doesn't have to be exclusively that. The Columbia Police Department, the report that they put out lists the incident type as criminal sexual contact in the second degree, which according to South Carolina law is when the actor uses aggravated coercion to accomplish sexual battery. So there's very few details outside of that. And, you can go look at the link in the show notes. There's not very many other details, but there are a few that I just didn't include in this report, but nothing I think that is, you're getting the gist of the story. I didn't leave out anything important, I don't believe. But if you just want some more details, you can do that. You could even see the incident report, and it's pretty heavily redacted, which isn't abnormal in certain circumstances, especially any sexual related crimes. You'll often see the victim's name redacted for their privacy, of course, and things like that. But I'm guessing because of his status as a state senator, number one, that's why his name was likely redacted originally, and a lot of the details were as well. So big bombshell that came out on Friday. Will it affect the election? We'll see. I think he was kind of expected to cruise through the primary at least, if not also the general election. But this could have major implications for that state Senate seat. So a big story, something we'll certainly keep our eyes on. The next episode is on Wednesday of the show, so we'll likely know at that point, pending any challenges or voting issues or whatever, if he did indeed triumph to move on to the general. So we'll certainly keep you posted. But as I said, just a big, big bombshell that came out on Friday. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Sinner Radio. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you did, please rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Maybe share it with a friend who lives in the Charleston area and may like it. You can also help out by going to patreon.com/Holy City Sinner. And of course, just going to holycitysinner.com and checking out the stories there, sharing them with people, or interacting with the Holy City Sinner accounts on social media. I want to thank Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Sinner Radio, and Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I hope you have a great week. Don't forget to vote on Tuesday in the primaries. And, it's very important to vote, even if you think it's a done deal for whatever candidate and whatever race you're most interested in. If you need information, just go to chsvotes.org. You can look up your polling location, make sure you are registered to vote and everything. If you're not, well, you'll be out of luck for this election, but good to know for next time. So that website will give you everything you need to know, including a sample ballot. So don't forget to vote on Tuesday. Have a great week. I'll talk to you on Wednesday, but until then, good night and good luck.